ねえねえ、私のポケットモンスターと勝負しない？
あんただーれ？
The first generation of Pokemon games were released in Japan on February 27, 1996, presented to the fan base as the red and green versions for the original Game Boy. Pokemon Blue was later released in October of the same year, and it was originally released as a special edition by mail to subscribers of Koro Koro comic magazine. It was later released to the general public in 1999. Right? What would make one of these games the better overall choice? Well, it boils down to strength. Starting with Fire Red, its version exclusives consist of Ekans and Arbok, Oddish, Gloom and Vileplume, Mankey and Primeape, Growlithe and Arcanine, Scyther, and lastly Electabuzz. Comparing it to Green and Blue, which share variant exclusives, theirs consist of Sandshrew and Sandslash, Vulpix and Ninetales, Meowth and Persian, Bellsprout, Weepinbell and Victreebel, Magmar, and lastly Pinsir. Based on pure numbers, both variants are tied for the amount of exclusives they offer, meaning at a solid 6 version exclusives, so we can't base our answer off of that. Let's dive deeper and add up the base stat total for the final evolutions of each. The red exclusives come in with a total base stat of 2404, with Arcanine being the strongest at 455. Green and Blue come in with a total base stat of 2449, with Pinsir being the strongest at 430. So if we base our answer off strength, this would make the correct choice blue or green, but blue if you don't want to read Japanese. Now I know what you're thinking, but Versauceii, what about yellow? Well, yellow was released 1 year after red and blue were made available internationally. It's like comparing emerald to ruby and sapphire. But if we are to include yellow, the primary base that it sits upon is that it follows the anime closely, and most version exclusives are available. Notice I said most, because even if you do plan on picking yellow, there are still some Pokemon left behind in red and blue, like Ekans and Arbok, Raichu, Meowth and Persian, Coughing and Wheezing, Jinx, Electabuzz, and Magmar. This is counteracted with the fact that yellow allows you to catch all 3 starters in the overworld from trainers, just like Ash did. So it's really a pick your poison sort of deal, and I picked blue. These aren't the only version exclusives available though. When it comes to gambling, what place is more notorious than the Celadon City Game Corner, featuring a multitude of slot machines for children to throw away their Pokémon whilst chasing the elusive jackpot in hopes of snagging themselves a ridiculously overpriced Porygon. While in blue, the Porygon is actually 1/3 cheaper. So let's take a look at the rest of the differences as well to see if they influence our decision or not. In Pokemon Red, you can snag yourself an Abra, Clefairy, Nidorina, Dratini, Scyther, and Porygon, with the median price for a Pokemon being $33.63 game coin. For blue, you can grab yourself an Abra, Clefairy, Nidorino, Dratini, Pinsir, and Porygon, with the median price being $22.61. That's a huge difference. 500 game coins cost 10,000 Pokéyen, which makes this a 22,040 Pokéyen difference. And if you know anything about the old games, getting money felt like a crime just because of how hard it was. Now when it comes to yellow, you can get every Pokemon mentioned before with the exclusion of Clefairy, Nidorina, and Nidorino, and Dratini, with the new addition of Vulpix and Wigglytuff. Coming in as the most expensive casino available, Yellow's Game Corner comes in with a median price of $44.84 game coin, or roughly 90,000 Pokéyen. So would this be enough to sway a decision? I think absolutely so, because I've always loved the fact that Pokemon capitalized on the childish charm a casino brings with it and decided to include it in their games. Whether you're addicted to catching Pokemon or running slots, they've got you hooked. So in terms of this bout, I'm going to give the crown to blue. Now when it comes to replayability, on the other hand, red and blue follow a linear storyline that does not change, and decisions do not matter. They are what you get and nothing more or less. When it comes to yellow, the player doesn't have a choice for the starter Pokemon. Instead, the player gets a Pikachu that will travel with the trainer throughout the game. The player can get the other 3 starters from trainers throughout the game as well. The rival starts with an Eevee that will evolve differently depending on your battles with him. If you win the battle at the lab and the battle on Route 22, he'll get a Jolteon. If you win the battle at the lab and not the battle at Route 22, he'll get a Flareon. And if you lose both battles, he'll end up with a Vaporeon. And that's a beautiful addition if you ask me. Charizard can now learn Fly. There's the Surfing Pikachu minigame. The gym leaders now have teams more closely reflecting those they had in the anime. Jesse and James make an appearance in this game with Ekans, Coughing, and Meowth, which can't be caught in Pokemon Yellow, giving them a more nefarious vibe. Trainers and Pokemon now have updated sprites, while their back sprites are the same as Red and Blue. So I think it's fair to say that Pokemon Yellow takes the cake in this round as the most replayable Pokemon game out of Gen 1. Now for our final bout, it's the real life price of the video games compared to the value that they bring. We'll be using price charting to help us gather the analytics. Accordingly, so you can find Pokemon Red as a loose cartridge for the median price of 63 USD. Now for the most part, I don't see anyone going out of their way to play these, except for the die-hard Pokemon fans that just want to experience the first release of Pokemon games for the first time, or the people who want to replay their nostalgic memories from childhood. Either way, I don't think $63 is a terrible price for a video game like some, compared to the value that these games could bring you. Pokemon Blue comes in with a median price of $60.50, and Pokemon Yellow comes in at $61.38, making Pokemon Red the most expensive. I think it's just because it has a Charizard on it, but granted, these games are within a couple dollar range from each other, so I just decided to give each one a point, which brings me to my conclusion, which is that whether you pick Pokemon Red based on your attraction to its version exclusives or the fact that it has a Charizard on it, you'll be in the same boat as if you had just chosen to buy Pokemon Blue, because even if you choose Yellow, you're inevitably going to have to buy one of the other versions to catch them all. So with that being said, just pick the game you want, bro, because Nintendo's still gonna need that cash at the end of the day. And if you get 2 versions, you might as well get all 3 to complete the collection. And if you're strapped for cash, but you still want to experience Gen 1 of the Pokemon games, I'm gonna say go ahead and grab Blue. But what do you think? Do you have any experience with these already? Or are you looking to grab one yourself? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch y'all next time.